Hello viewers, welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to show you how much medium you should really be adding to your oil paints. It's pretty easy. You're going to use as little as humanly possible to get the paint to perform the way you want. And ideally, you want your paint to feel like soft, melty butter. Not runny, but just to the point before it starts to get to that. Now, of course, you may have your own preferences. You may like really stiff paint, or if you're going heavy impasto, painting with knives, of course, that's going to be a little bit different. But as far as painting with brushes and going for that really luxurious feel, I'm going to show you how to get to that point and give you some tips, what to look out for. Because if you use too much medium, it's going to really alter the properties of the paint, and it's just not going to yield really good results. I've made that mistake many times in my learning process, so this is to help you out, the viewer, not have to go through that. It's a little frustrating. The idea is just to paint and not waste time fussing around. So here we go. So I have two colors out here. This is ultramarine blue from Gamblin, and this is Gamblin's lead white replacement. Although this does not have real lead in it, which is extremely heavy, and I have used real lead white paint, this replacement paint is very, very similar. The reason I have it out is because it's so heavy, you got to use a little bit more medium to achieve the same result as if, adding proportionally less medium to a softer paint like this ultramarine blue. I have two examples out here as far as mediums go: refined linseed oil and Neo McGilp. Neo McGilp is my favorite, along with, say, the Winsor Newton Liquin. The Liquin makes the paint dry quicker. The Neo McGilp adds a little bit of drying time to the paint. Depending on what it is you're trying to do from day to day, I'll pick whichever works best. So if I know I want to be painting over a layer of paint immediately the next day, I'll go Liquin. The Neo McGilp, if I want to be able to blend it a little bit better the next day, paint into paint, then I'll use this because it keeps the paint softer and wetter for longer. And then the refined linseed oil, I don't really use it, but I know, this is how I started off, and I know a lot of artists are going to use it, so I decided to have two examples on my palette. So we'll mix each medium into paint the right amount, and then I'll add too much so you can see what's going on, and I'll share my thoughts about that. I'll clean my paintbrush in between each mixture by putting it into some odorless mineral spirits in my jar here. I'll wipe the brush out, and then we'll start fresh. Okay, let's begin. So let's start with the refined linseed oil. I'm going to take some. It's very smooth. Feels like regular oil, as if you were to put some baby oil or something. It's very wet. There's some paint in this brush. That's okay. This shows you, there's a lot of medium to a proportionally very small amount of paint. Obviously, it's extremely transparent. The more medium you add, it's going to, quote unquote, thin out the color and force it to be more transparent, regardless of the properties of the medium, unless it was like a cold beeswax or something. That's a little bit different. All right, so let's take some color. And this paint feels pretty good already. You could almost paint straight from the tube with this. It's not bad at all, but it's not perfect. And by not perfect, you could feel a slight drag on the brush head. So I need just a little touch, a little right there into the paintbrush, and I work it in. And already that feels really good. That's perfect. There is no reason to add more medium than this. Just a slight amount. No more dragging. The brush feels good. It feels smooth. It feels very creamy. That consistency, ready to paint. So let's do a pile right here where there's too much medium. So let's get a little fresh paint, more paint added to that pile. Scoop up too much medium. Okay, yeah. That's way too much. So you can already see, you know, from side to side how this texture is very different. I would be adding more paint back to kind of fix this. Yes, it feels very wet. Yes, it feels extremely slick, too slick. But it's going to really thin this out. It's going to change the drying time of the paint, obviously. Going to take longer. And then when you use something like this, is the fat over lean rule is very important. So since I added so much fat, the oil to this paint, to go over was a subsequent layer, you'd have to add even more of this linseed oil to the color that's going on top. And to me, that's, you know, not exactly the fun way, the right way, whatever way of using oil paints. And if you were to still go crazy, now it's turning like into watercolors. A lot of oil with very little pigment, so it's floating, it's suspending, it's extremely transparent. And if you were really going for an extremely transparent glaze, you know, obviously that's okay, but this is really more so for your main painting. We'll talk about glazing in a later video. But yeah, this isn't really how you want to start off. Remember, smooth, soft, creamy butter, in my opinion, is the way to go here. It just feels better. The paint goes down so nicely. Really nice handling properties between the brush and the paint. It just feels right. It's got that oomph factor. So Neo McGill, you can see it's more like a gel. I wiped that brush out pretty damn good. I didn't feel a need to have to wash it in the mineral spirits, but definitely when we change over to the white. Okay, so here's some fresh ultramarine blue. Neo McGill. See, that's a gel. It doesn't flow like, say, that linseed oil does. However, the handling properties of this medium, when you start working it like this, it thins out. And then when you leave it alone, it kind of gels up again. So I used too much there in my first shot. So I'm adding more paint back in, trying to get it to where it needs to be. So this here is an example of there's too much medium in it. I don't like it. I don't want to use that. Let's go over here. Let's add more blue. Let's get that perfect consistency. So this is too much of this Neo McGill. Did for me one of my top 2 favorites, just as a comparison to linseed oil. So this feels way better. Significantly more paint in this. I could even go more paint. A little bit of this goes a long way. A little bit of any medium goes a long way. And it's very easy to overdo. Like, you don't want it to feel like a cheap acrylic paint straight from the tube. But you really want to get, yes, this is that perfect consistency right here. There's proportionally very little medium to the paint. I would start, 5% medium, if needed, unless the paint was, if the paint comes out of the tube and it's really, really spot on, unless you're trying to deliberately change some property of that paint, let's say dry time, then you wouldn't need to add any medium. It's ready to go. You're ready to mix it into your colors. This feels perfect. Yes. Very luxurious, smooth brush strokes. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to clean this up, and then we're going to do the same thing with a much heavier paint, this lead white replacement. Hang on 1 second. Okay, so now we're ready to work with the lead white replacement, a very, very heavy oil paint. I cleaned up the palette, as you can see. I washed my brush out really good. It's the same paintbrush, and I wiped down the surface with odorless mineral spirits to make sure there's no residue anywhere on this work surface. So here's, again, refined linseed oil, Neo McGill, and white paint. So let's just go straight into this pigment, this white. And just start working it. So there's no medium, 0. If anything, there's a trace amount of odorless mineral spirits in these bristles. A negligible amount, excuse me. So you could, like that, it's heavy. It feels good. It's quality paint, yes. Gamblin makes good stuff. I recommend it to anyone. Yes, that is very thick, very heavy. It's got that stringiness. So, unless I was doing final highlights, where I want the thickest paint, and in which case I'd be using titanium white, which is a much stronger white than this. That being aside, I'm going to have to work in some medium for this demonstration. So let's take, here's paint, white, pure lead white replacement. We're gonna, way too heavy, way too stiff. I can feel it pulling the bristles out of this rather expensive paintbrush. So let's add medium. I grabbed a lot there. But you got to use more for a much heavier paint to get the result. And it's different, and this is just something that's going to come with practice, feel, and then you'll just do it on autopilot, and you'll subconsciously have a very good approximation of what you need to use, and if it was slightly out of whack, you would adjust. So you still needed to grab a little more of the medium, you'd be good to go. If you grab too much, you could just add more paint to it to balance it out. So yeah, proportionally much more of that linseed oil mix here. Very nice. It's got that consistency. Now, let's add too much. Way too much. Look at that. Now it looks like watercolors. It's runny, it's thin, significantly more transparent, because the medium is suspending the pigment particles. There's less of it, so more light can come through the mixture and give it that transparent look. It's what's happening. So yeah, this is no good. Too heavy, straight from the tube. Perfect, creamy, buttery smooth, very luxurious. And then this is just too much. I don't know what you would use this type of mixture for. All right, for this I am going to give the brush another wipe. Gentle squeeze to get everything out of the bristles. Let's grab some fresh paint here. Let's add the Neo McGill for the comparison. There's a lot of paint here. Let's grab about that much. Let's see what happens. And of course, if you were needing to mix up a big pile of color, you'd probably be grabbing a painting knife to do that heavy legwork, heavy mixing. But for this demonstration and for what I'm doing, this is more than adequate. This is a small pile of paint. And this is normally how I mix colors, because I'll work in, matte You try to get a color match, put it down. It's good. Move on to the next color. Okay, so that was a pretty decent amount of medium into a pretty decent amount of paint that's very heavy. But this has that nice creaminess. I wouldn't add any more than this. This is perfect. It just feels good. Feels very good. Yeah, we'll see what happens if we add a little more to that pile. I guess I was wrong. That feels better still. Again, you see that heavy lead feel. Got to use more medium to get it to feel just right. That's very nice. Okay, so let's go here and let's really add too much. Look at that. That's beyond excessive. Beyond excessive. Despite that having that amber honey color, does not grossly affect the colors. And I'm mixing that into white, and the change is very subtle. I also use way too much, just beyond too much. So you can see what's happening. It actually looks like a cheap paint, like a cheap acrylic paint. From my experience using cheaper brands early on in my art career, you know, it looks like it's very transparent, very little pigment, too much medium. You can see that. That's no good. Let's do that same little swab using this much nicer mixture. We'll go right over here. Oh, that feels so much better. Covers much better too. See if we can get a little side by side. See the difference. Big difference. This is what you're going for, not this. Yeah, so hopefully this helped you. You know, the idea is to get you painting and not getting frustrated, losing motivation, and wasting too much time, right? I mean, there's only so many hours in a day, and most of us work, school, relationships, social lives. So not too many of us have time to waste. I certainly don't. And there we go. That's a boneheaded move. I'm not going to edit that out. That's staying in. So there's a lesson to be learned there. Don't put a paintbrush down and then flick it with your fingers directly into your work area. Organization counts, cleanliness counts, but a little mineral spirits on a paper towel takes care of that problem, no problem. Consider it bonus content. Anyway, if that video helped you, please subscribe, like, and share. It helps out the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Thank you.